Okay, so if we kick off, for those who don't know me, my name's Greg Kingsley. I'm the product manager here at Ness Corporation. We've been dealing with the M1 in various forms. It has expanded over the years, but the M1 is a very solid platform. It's been out for many years. It's virtually bulletproof. We have a little slogan with the M1, if you can dream it, M1 can do it. And hopefully we'll be able to demonstrate that to you today and show you just really how easy it is for you to be able to program the system to operate how you wish to operate and to do the features that you want it to be able to do. The M1 is more than just a residential panel, which is very strong in residential and security and automation, but it's been used in a lot of different applications around the world, from residential, commercial, fitness centres, education, shops, you name it. M1 can be used with a lot of different add-ons, whether it be voice control, whether it be interface into CCTV systems, that anything can occur on an M1, can happen on CCTV systems, including video verification and so on, so on. The M1 itself comes at the top left-hand side in this clamshell. It comes with 16 zones on board and can be expanded up to 208 zones. It is a hybrid system, so we can add wireless receivers onto the system. So out of that 208 zones, 144 zones can be wireless, or you can mix and match. So for example, if you only wanted to have perhaps 4 zones of wireless, then you can have 204 zones of hardwired to make a maximum of 208 zones. The system has 13 outputs on board. So obviously you've got your internal siren, your outside siren, your strobe, and you've got 10 other outputs on board, but it can be expanded up to 205 outputs by putting output expanders on. The system can support up to 199 users. It can be split into 8 areas. So you can have the house, garage, warehouse, storeroom, sales office, manufacturing plant, or whatever you want, broken into various areas. There's 6 arming levels, which we'll cover a little bit more details shortly, but the 6 arming station, you can arm it in away, home, vacation, etc. And as I said, we'll cover that a little bit more later. There's a lot of other functions that can have. It's an optional 2-way listen in for alarm verification. So if alarm goes in, you can listen in to the microphones installed on site, hear what's going on. Obviously, you've got video verification from maps or whatever you can go into. There's also a built-in astronomic clock, so the system knows where the system's been installed. So if you want to turn, for example, lights on in a car park, you can turn it on when it gets dark rather than a set time, because a set time doesn't work from winter to summer. You don't want to turn the lights on, for example, at 6 o'clock in the middle of summer. The customer will think it's turning on in the middle of the day, where if you're turning on it's 8 or 9 o'clock at night in winter, it's too late. So with the astronomic clock, it knows exactly where the panel is installed, and you know when sunrise and sunset is for that location. So then you can say whenever it's at sunset or period before or after sunset, turn the light on and off, or do whatever you want it to do at that particular time. The M1 itself, obviously we sell it as a clamshell only or as a panel only, but we sell it as a kit in 3 different forms. We sell it in a 14-inch housing, a 28-inch housing, and now we've introduced a new one in a 14-inch housing, which we call 2-way wireless ready. It comes for the radio receiver built in. So with the radio receiver in the kit, the 2-way wireless radio receiver kit, it's a great cost saving. And then you just have to buy the peripheral radio devices that you want to go onto it. So if you're going to put radio on, it's the way to buy a kit. All kits come complete with obviously the board, the housing, backup battery, power supply, tamper switch, etc. So it all comes, all you have to really then is select what keypad you want, what detection devices you want, and sirens, etc. There's 3 main keypads that are sold as options for the system. We've got on the left-hand side here the LCD keypad, 16-character LCD display. There's also the touchscreen, the 3.5-inch touchscreen navigator keypad, and there's also the arming station. The arming station is great if you want to put into perhaps a storeroom or garage where you don't want the full display of knowing what zones or be able to program it from the keypad, etc. All you want to do is to know if that area is armed or disarmed, to be able to arm and disarm it. Also has 6 function buttons, which we'll cover the function buttons shortly. But 6 function buttons, so it's a great little low-cost alternative for the areas where you just want to arm and disarm that area rather than putting the main keypad in the system. You can mix and match these keypads on the one system, so you can have some LCD, some navigator, touchscreen, some arming stations, all on the one system, up to 16 keypads on the system. Some of the functions or the features of the keypad themselves and some of the differences between the two is that on the navigator and KP2, there is an input and an output hardwired into those keypads if you wish to, where it's not available on the arming station. Now, a great advantage of that is that you may want to wire a zone from the front door, for example, straight into the keypad. You want to lock output, take the lock output out of the keypad rather than home running it all the way back to the panel. So you can do that straight in and out of the keypad. The KP2 keypad also has an optional external 26-bit WearGAN, so you can hardwire a card reader directly into the back of the KP2 keypad. So again, if you've got the keypad at the front door, you can hardwire the 26-bit WearGAN straight into that keypad and then still have your front door read switch at that keypad and the lock output again without having to hardwire back. It's only that keypad that has the WearGAN. The navigator and the arming station don't, so you'd have to wire if you want to put a prox readers onto the system, you wire them back into a single door access module. Function buttons on the navigator keypad, there is 6 function buttons and 6 on the arming station, and on the LCD keypad there's 4 function buttons. We can see the 4 function buttons down the bottom row of the keypad. And a function button as default out of the factory is set, for example, police, fire, medical, but they can be programmed to whatever you want. They might be programmed to turn a light on and off, to unlock a front gate, to open and shut the roller door, to arm a different area, or whatever you want to use them. You're fully programmable of what you want to use them for. So they're the main functions between, or features, difference between the various keypads, apart from obviously the looks. KP2 has the LCD backlit where the navigator's a touchscreen. And when we look later for programming, it's a lot easier to program and for the customer to operate with a navigator touchscreen, is because they're looking at one page of options at a time rather than just one option at a time. And you use the navigator keypads to go the next option, next option, next option. The navigator's got a full page of them at a time. The siren outputs out of the system, if we first of all look at the outside siren, the outside siren can be as default out of the factory. It's got just put an 8-ohm horn speaker. It's got a siren driver built in. With the outside siren output, which is output 2, and we'll have a look at this shortly, it's programmable to be either a siren output or 12-volt output. So if you're going to connect it to, say, a combo siren that just needs 12 volts, you can program that output to be a 12-volt siren output. If you want to put a high security satellite siren on, only needs to be 12-volt output where you've got the siren output. The inside sirens should really be a 8-ohm horn speaker. The reason for that is that's where the voice comes out of the system as well. So we get the voice out of the internal siren where it says system armed, system disarmed, gives the customer some guidance. The back door is open when they're trying to arm, etc. All that voice comes out of the internal speakers or the inside speakers. So if you were to put a 12-volt top hat screamer, for example, then sure, it will activate when there's an alarm, but no voice will come out. So that's where we recommend to use an 8-ohm horn speaker. Of course, you could use an 8-ohm horn speaker like the outside siren, but it does sound a little bit tinny. So if you use, for example, our Eco speaker, then that gives a nice bass sound, and it is paintable. So you could put that cover directly up, or alternatively, when you put it up, you could paint that the same color as the wall so it blends in, or the ceiling, depends where you want to mount it. There's also an optional plug-in Ethernet module. So if you're going to connect to program it, perhaps via the Ethernet, the local or remote, if you want to get email notification, can connect to a time server. If you want to then connect to an app, of course, you need to then put it to the Ethernet module to be able to get it on the outside world, etc. So that's an optional Ethernet module that plugs in. And in regards to apps, there's really 3 main apps that are available: the M1 Cloud, the M1 Touch Pro, and the eKeypad. Effectively, the M1 Touch Pro and eKeypad are becoming obsolete now because the new Cloud app, which there's no port forwarding required, except you get true push notifications. As shown on the left-hand side there, you've got your push notification. You've got full control of the system, both security and automation. You can turn lights on and off, outputs on and off, run tasks, do whatever you want via the cloud. And also you're just paying a monthly fee rather than paying $60 out, or for an iOS version, $170 plus for the app. So for the cloud, you're just running a small little service, a monthly service fee for the cloud. We'll have a look at modules that can go onto the bus, but effectively all the modules you want to put in, input, output expanders, wireless receivers, single door access modules, sit on the data bus. And we're going to cover this, as I said, in more detail shortly. All the modules should be daisy chained in and out. But if you want a home run, we do have data bus hubs, and we'll have a look at that shortly. In regards to the radio receiver, just down there, so when we put a radio receiver, we can actually put 4 transceivers or 4 radio receivers on the system. So if you've got a large facility that you want to be able to cover, in this example, if it's a commercial premises, shipping, warehouse, production, sales office, etc., you can put a transceiver or receiver in each one of those areas and give you a total coverage, a lot larger coverage than what you would be able to if you can only put one receiver on there. With the two-way wireless, one of the things that make it totally reliable and security sense and a long life for the battery, low power consumption, is that when a device transmits, it then gets a signal back from the receiver to say, I've got you, stop sending it to me. So it only sends a signal once or twice instead of about 25 times at full power. So when the LED comes on the two-way, it comes on when it gets a signal back from the transceiver. So you know exactly when it is. Also, when you're in walk test and you've got the wireless PIR, the Lux wireless PIR, when you walk in front of it, the high intensity LED comes on when the customer's doing a walk test, so they know that, again, it's got the receiver has given the signal back to the transmitter to put that night light on. So it makes it a lot easier to know when it's been detected when you're doing a walk test on the system. With the radio key, the same. The LED comes on, lights up either red or green. So when I arm the system, the LED will come up red. When we disarm with a radio key, it comes up green. So straight away, you don't have to chirp the sirens outside and wake all the neighbours up when you're arming and disarming to know if it's armed or disarmed. You can see the LED on the radio key to know if it's been armed or disarmed. If you're driving up or you come home and you want to know, is the system armed or disarmed, then you just hit the information button, the button there. When you push that, again, if it lights up red, you know the system's armed. If it lights up green, you know it's disarmed. If it lights up red and it's flashing, then you know it's armed, but we're in alarm, like the strobe would be flashing. So it's flashing to say, yes, I'm armed, but I've got an alarm. Be cautious, since you've been out, there's been an alarm activated. What we find is a lot of people will get these radio keys and they push the button and no light comes on. And they think the battery's flat. And the reason the light's not coming on is because the light only comes on when it gets a signal back from the transceiver. So just something to watch is that when you get the radio key and you're pushing the buttons, if the light doesn't come on, of course, because it's not learnt into the receiver to get the signal back from there. So just to be aware of that on the two-way. To add more hardwired zones onto the system, we've got the zone expander here. So with the zone expander, it sits on the 4-wire data bus and there's 16 hardwired inputs. And you can put up to an additional 12 expanders on the system. 12 times 16 plus the one that's on the main board equals 208 zones. With the output expanders, there's 2 different type of modules that can provide an output. The first one on the right-hand side here is the M1 RB, M1 or relay board. It just sits on a ribbon cable, so you plug it into the main board on the ribbon cable and gives you 8 relay outputs. The second one sits on the data bus, so we'll see the little data bus blue connector down the bottom right-hand corner here. Data bus comes in here, and it gives us 8 relay outputs. Now that's a 16-zone output expander. We've got 8 relays and 8 voltage outputs. If I add then this relay board, plug the ribbon cable straight into that expander, it gives me 8 relay plus another 8 is your 16 relay outputs. Okay, so it's a 16 output expander that sits on the data bus, 8 relays and then 8 voltage, but plug that relay board in, now gives you 8 plus 8, 16 relay outputs. So you can use that for controlling anything, garage door, lights, pumps, sprinklers, fans, you name it, it can be used for effectively anything. For access control, the system can handle up to 16 access control doors, 199 users, and it connects via, it can have a card reader going straight into the KP2 keypad, or alternatively, you can then have a single door access module that you put the card reader into. Now, if you want more advanced functions of knowing who went through what doors at what time and software for the end users, etc., then we advise to recommend to put it into a more dedicated access control system. And we have two main access control systems that we've got there, being the Hikvision 4-door access control or the Verdi MCP 4-door. And what that does is we have an interface into the M1. So you badge the card in 3 times on the access controller to arm the system. One card will then disarm the system. And when you've got the system armed or disarmed, it can deny you access while the system is in the arm state. So if people aren't authorized to be able to arm or disarm the M1, we can deny them access through the door. So they're not coming through the front door at 9 o'clock, which they're authorized to do, but the alarm system's still on and cause false alarms. So the system can still deny you access while the alarm system's on. Someone who's got permission to be able to then badge a card to then disarm the alarm system will then enable the other users. So that's what's available both with the Hikvision 2 and 4-door access controllers and the Verdi, if you want more than typical 16 doors, more than 199 users, etc. The single door access module, which is this unit here, it sits on the 4-wire data bus, again down here, and then you've got the WeGAN input for your card reader. It's got the relay output for your lock. It's got a zone input, request to exit input. It's got adjustable times up here that by the links there that you can set for how long a door open, too long, door held open on the system. And if you want to put 5, 6, 7 doors on the system, you just buy another single door access module. So it makes it nice and easy. Just run a Cat5 cable, put the single door access module perhaps above the door on the secure side. Again, you don't have to necessarily hardwire the card reader and everything back to the main panel. Other things that we can integrate into the M1 is basically anything electrical. So whether it be lighting control systems, as I mentioned, access control, thermostats, sprinklers, covering anything electrical can do it, and it can be done either on a high level or low level. So obviously a sprinkler system just needs to have a voltage, a door strike just needs to have a voltage, so you can do that via the low level. We also have a lot of high level interface to various things, so whether it be sitting on the data bus, so whether it be a Lutron, whether it be UPB, Instant, whether it be the communicating thermostats to control things like Carrier air conditionings, Daikin, Mitsubishi, Toshiba, etc. Serial port expander that allows you to put another 8 RS-232 ports, another 8 485 ports for high-level interfaces into various things. So if you want to interface into UPB, for example, that plugs into the serial port expander. You set the links for UPB, so effectively comes in here, serial expander, and then goes out to UPB. If you wanted to go to the Coolmaster to interface to Daikin, Mitsubishi, etc., you set the links up for that, and it will then set it up. A lot of other high-level interfaces that we've got. This is, again, it's just a small example of what we've got high-level interfaces for, whether it be the CBus Clipsal, which sits directly onto the Cat5 data bus of CBus, so you don't need a PSI or CNI. Control 4, we sit that interfaces via the Ethernet module. Advantage Air, as I said, Daikin, Crestron, AMX, virtually you name, a lot of those functions have got it, and if not, there's more and more getting at it all the time. But all the main ones, Control 4, KNX, CBus, Crestron, AMX, we've got it covered. We've also got a voice interface. So with the Ness automation bridge, nice little plug-and-play device is that will interface into any of your smart speakers, the Google, Amazon, Alexa, Siri, etc. It will talk to all the main 3 ones there, even an iWatch, etc. So you've got full control from via your voice. So if you want to say, open the garage door, turn the sprinklers on, do this or do that, arm the system if you wanted to, it's fully programmable. So you can be lying in bed and tell it to turn the lamp on. Don't even have to stick your nose out of the bed. Just do it all from voice. There's also water sensors. So one of the biggest damages in a house is when a water pipe bursts, washing machine overflows, the hose, incoming hose from a washing machine, dishwasher bursts. So you can put the water sensor directly behind those devices. And when they detect, we can then activate a water shutoff valve that electrically shuts the incoming water off to a premises. The customer then comes home, sees that they've had water damage. There's only a little puddle behind there. They can fix the hose, do what they need to do, hit a button on the keypad, and bang, they've got water connected again. So it saves a lot. If you want to switch something higher voltage than normal 12 volts that you would with the M1 relay, we sell the little Omron relay that can switch 240 volts right up to your solid state relay that can switch 240 volt, 40 amps. So you can switch your 12 volt input straight from an M1, and then you've got your high current load on the outside. So if you want to turn on and off, water heaters, pumps, high voltage lights, etc., motors, you can do that via one of those devices. And one of the last modules we can put on there is also the temperature probes. We can put up to 16 temperature probes, and they're great for putting it into food storage areas, freezers, computer rooms to know if, or server room to know if the air conditioning has gone bust or something like that. So you will know that it'll give you an alert that the temperature's gone up or below a certain thing. You know what the temperature in your pool or your spa is. One thing to watch is the temperature sensors must connect to one of the first 16 zones on the panel. You can't put a temperature sensor connected to one of the remote zones on the data bus. It's got to be the main zones, the first 16 zones on the panel. And if you want more power out of the M1 was capable of driving 1.5 amps out of the system. We recommend once you get above 1 amp, 1.1 amps, to add an external power supply. We recommend something like our PW315. It's a 12 volt 5 amp power supply, and with the backup battery all included. And then you've got the area up the top of the power supply to put some expansion modules. So whether it be an input expander, an output expander, or via that little metal bracket there, that screws on the back of the housing, and that allows you to put 2 modules in here. So on that one power supply, you can put, for example, 2 zone expanders, 32 zones, an input and output expander, so 16 inputs, 16 outputs on that one little panel, and all you need to do is run a Cat5 cable from the main panel to this one, to the next one, to the next one, to give you power for all those modules, rather than getting home running everything back to the panel. So if you had a large commercial premises, factory, warehouse, and you've got zones in all the factories or the warehouse, you don't have to then home run it back to the panel. Just put a little satellite module in here, 16 input, 16 output, for example, if you want to put in there, and just run a Cat5 cable from the panel. It's a lot cheaper than running all the cables and everything and the labor back to the main panel. And just on that, there's other expansion modules that we've covered the little 2-tier module down the bottom. We sell the enclosures separate, the 14-inch and the 28-inch. There's a battery shelf, so if you've got a 14-inch, the battery can sit on the bottom nicely. The 28-inch, you may not want to run the cable down to the battery in the bottom, so you can put a battery shelf to put the main panel up there, battery here, and leave all the bottom area clean for extra zone expanders. When you mount the panel into the housing, as you can see there, the M1 clamshell sits on there. There's 2 screws that you mount in the back of the housing, and then without even taking the clamshell, the board out of the clamshell, that will then clip onto the board, slits on there nicely, couple of locking screws at the bottom, and your panel's mounted. You can mount the Ethernet module up the top right, a zone expander or an output expander on the left, battery down the bottom, and if you want to, you can also put a data bus hub, which we're going to cover in a moment. One little trap for young players is if you're going to put an output or an input expander in a 14-inch housing, as you can see there, they all come with a circuit board guide, so it stands them up so you're using less room in there. Don't mount the input or output expander on the right-hand side, because that's showing an Ethernet module, which is only half size. If you put a zone expander, it goes down to, say, that area there, on the right hand side, and when you put the lid on, the cam lock is going to knock on that board and you won't be able to lock it. So then you think, oh, so now I've got to take that board off and put on the left hand side, which is not a problem because the cam lock's not going to hit it. So just be aware the cam lock on the right hand side there is, don't put an expander down that side. When you put it in a 28-inch housing, so here's an example now, is that we have the M1 up here, Ethernet module up here, data bus hub, we've got the battery sitting on a battery shelf, we've got some zone expanders and output expanders laying down on the board, which you can do, or via the circuit board guides that come with them, is that the circuit boards, they can stand up in that area there. So it makes a lot more room to be able to put a lot more modules in there. You can effectively put 4, 8, 16, 20 odd modules in the system. So just before we go on to the next section, any questions that come in? I can see we've got one here. Can we get announcements from the M1 to the Google speakers? Yes, you can. So you can program the automation bridge to say whatever you want. So you to hype in what you want, and then when an event occurs on the M1, you can get it to speak through the Google speakers. At the moment, it only works with the Google home speakers or the Google speakers. It doesn't work with Alexa, but there might be some development on that shortly. But yeah, definitely with the Google speakers, you can get it to talk. So when the perhaps garage door opens, system armed, disarmed, or whatever you want to do, it can come out of the Google speakers as well. Can readers be wired into the bus? Card readers need to be wired into the single door access module. So you hardwire the card readers into the single door access module, and the single door module will then sit on the data bus. So it may or may not answer your question. The card reader itself can't sit on the bus, but when you're wired into the access control module, the access control module is sitting on the bus. So in that way you can, yes, but you can't get a 485 card reader and sit on the M1 485 data bus, because all the 485 data bus, it's 128-bit encrypted. We're talking about security. So a normal RS485 reader doesn't have that sort of encryption that the M1 handled. And if it did, then it's really a security breach on that 485, because of everyone will know the protocols. So yeah, that's how you connect the card readers to it. And it also has to be 26-bit WeGAN. So you could even do face recognition. We're getting more and more people that I've heard of recent times, with cost of biometrics getting a lot lower, and people don't want to touch fingerprint readers, etc. now with the COVID, etc. So you can then put a face recognition unit on the system, have the WeGAN go into the module on the data bus, and then you just walk up to the keypad or walk up to wherever you want to do, picks your face up, and then can arm the system, disarm the system, or whatever you wish to do. All right, if there's no questions, we'll continue on here and look at the hardware overview.